You are listening to The Overthinker's Guide to Joy, episode 79. This is the one where I'm going to talk about a different kind of addiction, the addiction to guilt. Let's dive in. This is a podcast for overthinkers, overdoers, and overachievers who are tired of feeling overanxious and just want to feel better. I'm your host, certified life coach, Jackie DeCrenis. Hey there, welcome back. So I thought I would do an episode on a subject that I love, which is self-help books. Self-help books were something that I always adored. I mean, way back in college, long before I was a life coach. It's my favorite section of the library. It's my favorite section of bookstores. I have some amazing self-help books that I have recommended to clients over the years, and I have some that I don't love. But I think what I love the most about self-help books, and my husband jokes because I have a library full of them. He says, that's because you're a constant self-improvement project. And like most of my husband's comments, I think there's a compliment buried in there somewhere, but it's a bit of a backhanded compliment. But it's true. I am a little bit of a self-improvement project. But the thing about self-help books is, as I said, there's some good ones, there's some great ones, and there's some that are just really good titles and good book covers. But in general, I think there's something to learn from everyone. And what I have found over the 30 plus years that I've been reading them is that usually there is one message that will resonate for me within the book, whether it's a line, a quote, a technique, a chapter. And that's fine. You know, if a book is 300 or 500 pages long and I get one kernel of information out of it, that's a win for me. And if I can share that with a client or a friend, it's even better. So I thought I would start by just talking about some of my favorite of the self-help books. This summer, I took a class from Jen Sincero, who is the New York Times bestseller, who wrote the book, You Are a Badass. And then she wrote a series of books and workbooks that followed with a very similar title. And it was my girlfriend, Lindsay, who had recommended You're a Badass to me shortly after it was published, I think in 2015. I may have read it in 2016. And I loved the whimsical nature of Jen's writing. And I found her just very inspirational. And I was transitioning out of my career in television. But there was one chapter on meditation that ended up motivating me to start meditating. That and the fact that my friend Bill had been telling me to start meditating for about a year or two earlier. Another one of my favorite books is written by Shakti Gawain. She wrote a book called Creative Visualization. And it's really to help people find their passions and manifest their dreams. But my favorite part of the book taught me about self-talk. And that's the importance of speaking kindly to yourself and about yourself. And it was actually brought to my attention by one of my my current yoga teachers. He would say to me, you tend to talk negatively about yourself. And I would do it in jest. I would do it as self-deprecating humor. And he said, the body doesn't really know the difference. When you say things like, oh, where's my brain today? Or I'm such a dummy. Or, oh, I'm fat. Or I'm not good at something. Then what happens is, you start to believe it, whether it's in jest or not, but your body actually listens. Your brain actually listens to the words you think and the words you say. And Shakti Gawain's book really brought that home for me, which is that by saying kind things about yourself and to yourself, you start creating a pathway of success for yourself. I mean, there's many, many other things in the book, but that was sort of my big takeaway of that one. I loved The Artist's Way by Julia Cameron. Again, a very old book, but this is the one that introduced me to morning pages. And that is, getting up every morning and just journaling or brain dumping onto a piece of paper, clearing your head so that you can then clear your mind for a more creative or productive day. I've talked many times about the books Atomic Habits by James Clear and Tiny Habits by B.J. Fogg. And both authors and researchers talk about the effects of adopting good daily habits, but not just like throwing out the baby with the bathwater, but really developing good habits in very, very small ways. So adopting tiny habits or atomic habits so that they become part of who you are. It's not like going on crash diets or deciding to run a marathon. It's about adopting a habit of daily exercise or learning to eat healthfully by making better choices. It's all done in micro ways so that they become lifetime habits. And then, of course, over time, success occurs from those micro habits. Another book I'm a big fan of is Dr. Sarno's book, Healing the Back, which is actually not about chronic back pain, but the connection between mind and body on any kind of chronic pain. This is a book that was recommended to me when I hurt my back years ago by my friend Charlie. And then I have since recommended it and given it to dozens and dozens of people who have suffered from chronic pain in one body part or another. And many of them have come back to me and says it changed their life because there is such a huge component to the mind-body connection and healing. I loved Gabrielle Bernstein's May Cause Miracles book and also The Universe Has Your Back, because sometimes I just need a dose of trusting that the universe and believing that there are things such as miracles. And then I was a big fan of First We Make the Beast Beautiful. And this was a book about embracing anxiety by Sarah Wilson. Sarah Wilson was a woman from Australia, an author from Australia who also gave up sugar and talked about the role that sugar played in her anxiety. But this book is not one of her culinary books or diet books. It's literally just about embracing anxiety and letting go of the concept of needing to conquer it. But sometimes embracing something instead of fighting it can often release us from the very thing that plagues us. Thus the title, right? First, we make the beast beautiful. So anyway, I could just list dozens and dozens and dozens of more books that I have loved and that have inspired me in one way or another. But my biggest problem with self-help books is that they're often overwritten. I think that too often, to justify sometimes a simple concept, authors or maybe the publishers demand too many pie charts and graphs. And I feel like when you're in pain physically or emotionally, sometimes you just need a very simple concept to grasp onto. And like the message or the simplicity of the message gets lost in just these big, massive books. But my point is, it doesn't really matter the size of the book or the reputation of the author or how pretty the book cover is. It's really about whether or not something in it resonates for you. And it doesn't all need to resonate. Really, you just need one little kernel. So if something sticks or motivates you or changes your perspective to get you out of the mud, then use it. Write it down, talk about it, memorize it, repeat it, share it, reread it, or re-listen to it. If someone recommends a book and it doesn't resonate for you, sometimes it might later. I've had several clients who have found different books that I've recommended on their bookshelves and realized they just never bothered to read them. And once they did and were open to receiving a particular message, it suddenly was like loud and clear. It's like trying new foods. Like I didn't like mushrooms or seafood as a kid. And when I became an adult, I couldn't get enough of linguine with clams. And now I love all kinds of fish. Our tastes change and our minds open up at different times. So this all brings me to my latest read. I've been listening to Breaking the Habit of Being Yourself by Dr. Joe Dispenza, which is a great title, by the way. And my favorite chapter is chapter 3. He talks about guilt. And guilt is something that I struggled with and many of my clients, particularly my female clients, tend to struggle with. I don't know why there is a propensity for women to carry so much guilt, particularly irrational guilt. I don't know if it's societal. I don't know if it's just upbringing. I don't know if it's cultural. But what I love about this chapter is he talks about guilt being addictive. And I was like, wait, what? And boy, did that resonate with me. So if you're a lifetime people pleaser, you may have found yourself always apologizing when things go wrong, even if it isn't your fault. And it turns out there's a neurochemical reason why we develop this habit. Are you one of those people who are quick to take the blame for things? saying things like, I'm sorry all the time, or it's my fault, or, oh, I shouldn't have done that, or if only I had done this. I know that there's just sometimes a de facto response of saying, I'm sorry, whether it's because somebody bumped into you at the grocery store, or you find yourself always apologizing. Like, I'll be on the tennis court, and I'll miss a shot, and I'll say to my doubles partner, oh, I'm sorry. Oh, I messed up. And it's like, that just takes us out of the moment, just takes us out of the game. But it's a habit, that feeling guilty of it's my fault or I need to apologize. So after years of doing this, you might have created, I certainly did, neural pathways and neurochemicals to reinforce this feeling, that feeling of guilt. And so what Dispenza says is the receptor sites in our brains adapt to continue this chemical expression of guilt. So apparently, when guilt becomes a habit or a pattern, our brains develop like an autonomic response, and they become desensitized to the flood of neurochemicals that are creating the response of guilt. And so like any good addiction, it requires more stimulus to get the same reaction from your cells. So you actually need stronger hits of guilt or neurochemical guilt for your cells to perk up. So the rush of feeling bad is actually required to feel alive. How crazy is that? Now, I'm paraphrasing from the book, but the sense of it is that you can basically be unconsciously guilty most of the time because you've become addicted to guilt. Now, it is only when somebody brings this to your attention that maybe you'll stop it for a moment. Somebody might say to you, why is this your fault? Or why is this your problem? Or why do you feel guilty about that? Now, you might even promise yourself to take a break. You may say, okay, I'm not going to allow this default pattern to happen anymore. It's like somebody who says, oh, I'm not going to drink tomorrow, or I'm not going to eat sugar tomorrow. And yet a few hours go by and you feel really good about yourself, but your cells, neurochemically speaking, are still waiting for its chemical needs. So Dispenza says it's not that different than being addicted to drugs or alcohol. Trying to change an emotional pattern is like going through an emotional withdrawal. Your intention is to produce more positive thoughts, but your neurochemistry is actually jonesing for the neurochemicals that are missing. Now, look, he's a doctor, so there's a lot more specific chemical explanations in his book. But the bottom line is this: it becomes good to feel bad. I know, that sounds so weird. But the mind starts playing tricks on us, digging up the past and playing the devil's advocate to our good intentions. So it's absolutely no different than, again, quitting smoking or drinking or doing drugs or eating junk food. It just is a chemical addiction. And we basically have to unmemorize an emotion that has become part of our personality. So the answer is we're just one thought away from changing these patterns. I know that sounds a little simplistic. But the thing that actually all of these self-help books have in common is the agreement that everything starts with your thoughts. It's not just about positive thinking, though. Trying to just think one way cannot simply override these chemicals and strongholds of lifetime habits. It's getting in touch with the feeling under the thought or the emotion that's directly connected. Feelings and emotions are chemical memories. So how do we rewire our brains to break the neurochemical emotional habit of guilt? Well, like with any addiction, the first step is awareness. By recognizing that you're feeling guilty and identifying the thoughts and situations that trigger the emotion. So that's step one. The step two is mindfulness. And of course, I'm going to recommend this, meditation. Practices like mindfulness and meditation can help you observe your thoughts and emotions without judgment. And by regularly practicing mindfulness, you can increase your awareness of guilt and its associated patterns. Now, what's the third? Challenge your negative beliefs. If guilt starts to creep up inside your being, challenge the beliefs by asking yourself, are they rational and evidence-based? In other words, are you being overly self-critical, or is there a legitimate reason for your guilt? The fourth thing, positive affirmations. You use positive affirmations to counteract negative self-talk. Repeating affirmations that promote self-forgiveness, self-compassion can gradually rewire your brain to think more positively about yourself. What's number 5? Gratitude journaling. I've talked a lot about journaling in this podcast, but regularly writing down things you're grateful for. This can shift your focus from guilt to appreciation and help break the addiction to negative emotions. Number 6, visualization. Dr. Joe Dispenza often emphasizes the power of visualization. This is something Shakti Gawain does too in her creative visualization book. You can use this technique to imagine yourself free from guilt, living a life without the burden of that emotion. So you might do this in your meditation, you might do this in your journaling, you might do this just while you're taking a walk, but really visualizing who you would be without that guilty overlay. Then there's neuroplasticity. Now, you've heard probably a lot about neuroplasticity, but this is just the brain being able to rewire itself. So by engaging in activities that promote positive neural pathways, such as learning a new skill, exercising, engaging in creative pursuits. This can be anything from painting, drawing, writing, pottery, running, yoga, just doing something that alters the neural pathway so that you're not sitting in the guilt stew. That can help rewire the brain and the thought processes. Seeking support. If guilt is deeply ingrained and affecting your daily life, consider seeking support, whether that's from a therapist or hiring a coach. We can provide you with personalized strategies to address and overcome guilt. Remember that breaking the addiction of guilt or any other negative emotion takes time and consistent effort. The key is to be patient with yourself and to stay committed to the process of rewiring your brain for more positive thought patterns and emotions. It's also important to note that guilt can be adaptive in certain situations by helping us learn from our mistakes. So it's not bad to have guilt if it helps us learn and do better. It's when excessive or irrational guilt creeps in that it can be detrimental to our well-being. And those are the ones we want to stop in their tracks. All right, friends, that is what I have for you today. I am wishing you a healthy, happy week, and let's go break the habit of excessive or irrational guilt, and let's go have some fun. All right, bye for now. Thank you for listening to this episode of the Overthinker's Guide to Joy. If you're enjoying these episodes, please subscribe or follow this podcast so you can always be in the know when the next episode drops. If you would like to learn more about working with me as a coach, you can connect with me through my website at jackiedegrenis.com. That's JACKIEDECRINIS.com.